Yo, what's up guys, hope you guys are doing good. So today we are going to see what if Hinata approached Naruto when they were in Academy Part 1. Hope you will enjoy this video, so before we start please like the video and subscribe to our channel and hit bell notification, it motivates me to upload more fanfics for my lovely audience. So let's get started. Naruto had the most beautiful eyes she'd ever seen. They were like the summer sky, like the tropical sea, and endlessly blue. Hinata thought privately, for she would never dare voice this aloud, that his eyes were more striking than any Hyuga eyes could ever hope to be. The pale pupilless eyes of her family's vaunted bloodline were cold, prideful, and intimidating. Naruto's eyes were the exact opposite. They were warm, vibrant, and full of life. Naruto's eyes were almost too pretty for a boy, she decided. Long, full eyelashes that curled up at the tips framed sapphire orbs. She could spend all day daydreaming about his eyes. Naruto was almost the exact antithesis to the Hyuga. Her clan was stern, almost cold, dignity was to be preserved at all costs. Rules were to be adhered to at all times. With their unique silver-white eyes and dark hair, the Hyuga were unmistakably the elite of the elite and the pride of Konoha. Naruto, on the other hand, was anything but. He was an unrecognized orphan with no background. He embodied chaos and flaunted the rules. It seemed fitting that, physically, he was as far from a Hyuga as it was possible to get. He had sun-kissed golden hair, not brown or black, and adorable whisker-like birthmarks on his cheeks. And he was so strong. He seemed to bounce back from any obstacle with little to no effort. Whenever he got knocked down, he got right back up and kept going. He was like no one else she'd ever met in her short life. He was everything she'd ever wanted to be. It was no wonder she developed a horrible crush on him the instant she'd seen him. Currently, she was in class trying desperately, with limited success, to keep her focus on Iruka-sensei's lesson, instead of on her blonde classmate. She couldn't afford to miss a thing. She was only in her second year at the academy, but already her performance shamed her father and her clan. Last year, she had received decent scores all across the board and been ranked somewhere in the upper middle of her class. But for the Hyuga, a decent score was abysmal. A Hyuga should ace any test of skill or knowledge, and to rank around the middle of her class was an embarrassment. A Hyuga should easily be able to surpass his or her peers. This held doubly true for the Hyuga heiress. She needed to do better this year. If she failed to score perfect marks this year, she didn't even want to imagine what her punishment would be. She shuddered inwardly. It didn't help matters that her cousin Neji, who was just 1 year older than her, had ranked first in his class. He had outperformed all his peers, seemingly without any effort. Already, he was hailed as the next great genius of her generation, and he was only 8. To make matters worse, he was the prodigy of the Hyuga branch family, while she was the heiress of the Hyuga main family. The lesson of the day was memory retention techniques used by shinobi in the field. Iruka-sensei was going over various mind games to strengthen memory recall and different ways to memorize information quickly. It was intriguing. She could see useful applications for these memory tricks outside of the shinobi field. For instance, she could use them to remember all the guests, by name and title, at the formal political dinners with her family that she was forced to meet and greet. She could also use them to memorize names and qualities of medicinal plants. Naruto, pay attention, barked Iruka-sensei, as he threw an eraser at the blonde. The class snickered as the eraser hit him in the face. The blonde boy had apparently been simultaneously preparing spitballs, folding paper airplanes, and carving the words, "Sasuke sucks," on his desk with a kunai. Naruto took multitasking to a whole new level. These memory retention techniques are very important for a ninja. And they're especially important for you. You can use them to help you remember your lessons and homework assignments, especially since you seem to keep forgetting everything I say. But Iruka-sensei, no buts, Naruto, if you're going to be a ninja. I am. If you're going to be a ninja, Iruka continued as if he hadn't been interrupted, then you'll need to be able to remember mission details after only hearing them once. You'll need to memorize names, faces, ranks and techniques from the bingo book. And what if you're sent on an espionage mission? After you infiltrate the enemy's base, you'll need to memorize exact numbers of enemy ninja and escape routes. If you discover their plans and strategies, you'll need to memorize those, too. You'll need to do all this without writing any of it down. Hi, Uruka-sensei, Naruto said with a gusty sigh, rubbing his head where the eraser had struck. Cheer up, Naruto. You can also use these techniques to memorize my lectures. Uruka grinned. Tell you what, if you can prove to me that you've mastered these memory retention techniques, I'll let you get away without taking notes in class for a week, because I'll assume you will memorize the lectures instead. Alright, Uruka-sensei. Why didn't you say so before? Naruto pumped his fist in the air. Hinata almost giggled at his behavior. He was just so full of life. That applies everyone else, too. The rest of the class perked up at that announcement. Uruka continued with the lecture. Now, as part of the midterm exams next week, you will be expected to demonstrate your ability to retain information using the memory techniques that we just discussed. An audio recording of 5 different mission details and 5 hypothetical conversations between enemy ninja will be played for the entire class, first thing in the morning. So don't be late. After lunch, you will write down every detail that you can remember from all 10 scenarios. Your grade is based on how much detail you have memorized. The class groaned. Your homework assignment for this week will be to practice all of these memory techniques using these. Uruka held up a cassette tape from a box on his desk. Make sure you each take one before you leave today. Each of these tapes contain 60 minutes of different scenarios you may encounter in the field, as well as a handful of bingo book entries, mostly well-known ninja. I expect you to listen to the tape, write down what you can remember, then go back and listen again, to see how much you were able to remember. The lunch bell rang, signaling the end of the lesson and the beginning of the lunch hour. The class, as one entity, swarmed out the doors of the academy and into the fresh air outside. Hinata noticed that her crush was lingering behind, deliberately waiting for all the other students to exit. He must want to speak with Uruka-sensei in private. She was torn, hesitating just outside the classroom. It was wrong to eavesdrop on other people's conversations. Hinata knew this, but the chance to find out more about her crush was so tempting. In the end, her curiosity overrode her conscience. She stayed where she was, out of sight of both Naruto and Uruka-sensei, but not out of earshot. Uruka-sensei. Both Uruka and Hinata were surprised at the hesitant tone coming from the normally confident blonde. Yes, Naruto, what can I help you with? Asked Uruka kindly. It's about our homework assignment. The assignment is very straightforward. I know it might not be fun, but if you master these techniques, it'll really be good for you, encouraged Uruka. It's not that, sensei, Naruto said in a small voice. Hinata had to strain to hear him. I don't own a cassette player, he said in a rush. At Uruka's look of surprise, he hurried to explain himself. I don't own a cassette player. And I can't purchase one. The stipend I receive for my school expenses won't cover something like this. I barely have enough for our textbooks and practice kunai and shuriken since those are so expensive. For someone like Hinata who had been trained from a young age to read both body language and tone of voice, the shame of having to admit to money problems was crystal clear. Can I borrow a tape player for the week? Please. I promise I won't damage it. Naruto asked hopefully. Outside, Hinata was momentarily stunned to hear that her crush couldn't afford something as simple as a tape player. Then she berated herself for her lack of insight. She knew he was an orphan. Coming from one of the richest clans in Konoha, she'd never had to worry about money. Still, that's not a good excuse. Of course, he wouldn't have money. He was an unrecognized orphan with no inheritance and he was too young to work. She was so distracted by this revelation that she completely missed what they were saying next. Naruto, Uruka said slowly. What do you mean when you said that your practice kunai and shuriken were expensive? Those things are dirt cheap. Practice kunai and shuriken intended for academy students were usually damaged or blunted and just one step away from being melted down for metal. I know approximately how much Naruto receives from the Orphan Scholarship Fund. It should be more than enough. I buy them from the main weapons shop downtown, by the Hokage Tower. They're cheapest there. Everywhere else is more expensive. I've checked. But they still cost about 2,500 yen a pair. Naruto looked down. 2,500 yen a pair. That's at least 5 times more than practice weapons are worth. Naruto was being deliberately overcharged. Uruka knew that the villagers despised Naruto's existence. He was ashamed to admit that, For a while, he had as well. Until Naruto had entered his classroom, he'd never thought much of the blonde, if he thought of him at all. But in the year that he'd been teaching Naruto, he had become fond of the little troublemaker. Naruto was just a boy, very much like Iruka had been. Naruto was quickly becoming the little brother he'd never had. Of course, Iruka had always been aware that the villagers were rude and unkind to Naruto. But to charge over 5 times what the practice weapons were worth. This was the first time he'd really understood, in his heart, and really saw, with uncovered eyes, how Naruto was abused and mistreated. Iruka seethed internally with anger. He took deep breath to try and calm himself. Naruto, still looking down, missed the dark look that crossed Iruka's face. Listen, Naruto, I'm sorry, I guess I never realized that ninja tools would be so expensive. Iruka thought furiously, how could he help Naruto without injuring his pride? More importantly, without bringing up the injustices Naruto was suffering. That would lead to too many questions he couldn't answer. I know, but as an instructor for the academy, I receive significant discounts on practice weapons for academy students, he lied through his teeth. At least the smile on his face was genuine. So the next time you need to buy them, come to me first, okay? I can help you buy them for much less than what you're paying now. Really? Wow. Thanks a lot, Iruka-sensei. You're the best. Naruto's enthusiastic shout brought Hinata out of her self-chastisement. Unfortunately, that won't help you right now. Iruka sighed. The academy has a few tape players. But I'm afraid that students aren't allowed to use them without supervision and they aren't allowed out of the classroom. Naruto's shoulders drooped. The best I can do is to let you stay in here with me during lunch times. You can use the tape player to practice then. Hinata slipped her hand into her pack. Fumbling a little, she felt for the cold, hard plastic of her own personal tape player. In a rare moment of indulgence, she had splurged and purchased a little player for herself, so that she could listen to her favorite music whenever she wanted. She could help him. This was her chance. She could give Naruto her player. The Hyuga weren't the richest clan in Konoha for nothing. There were several other tape players scattered about the estate that she could use for her assignment instead. But, if she gave it to him now, then Naruto would know that she'd been eavesdropping. What would he think of her? Would he hate her for spying on him? Her heart trembled with indecision. To run forward, or to run away, what should she do? In an alternate time and place, Hinata did not move. She did not offer him her tape player. And she did not find the courage to offer her friendship to Naruto until after their first Chunin exams. He would go through the next 5 years of the academy friendless and lonely while she watched from afar. One small action at the right time, at the right place, would change the world. In this time and place, Hinata took one small step. One small significant step, followed by another, then another. I won't run away. I won't run away, until she was standing before the 2 surprised males. Hinata, her sensei asked, surprised. But to Hinata, only Naruto existed. Hinata held her tape player in both hands and bowed quickly, thrusting it in Naruto's general vicinity and almost hitting him in the chest with it in the process. FF for you, she managed to squeak out. Naruto reached out hesitantly and took the player from her hands. This is, for me. He couldn't contain his disbelief. He could count on one hand all the presents he'd ever received. And now the quietest girl in his class, who had never even spoken to him, not even to say, hi, was giving him her own tape player. He didn't understand it, not at all. Hinata didn't quite trust her voice. So she settled for just nodding vigorously. Why, well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. She stammered. I overheard you say you didn't have one, so. Her voice trailed off and she shut her eyes in a futile attempt to avoid the revulsion that they must be feeling at her shameful confession. Oh why did she not run away? Naruto would certainly hate her now. She had just confessed to deliberately spying on him. There was no way she could possibly justify her actions. The next several seconds were the longest in her life. She dared a peek at her crush, only instead of anger or disgust, which she fully expected, she saw wariness. You heard me say I needed a tape player. And you want to give me yours? Hi. He gave her a long searching look. Just as she was about to fidget nervously, the wariness in his face vanished, replaced by happiness. Suddenly, she was nearly knocked over by an exuberant blonde who had enthusiastically thrown his arms around her. Thank you. All sentient thought ground to a halt. His beautiful eyes, the ones she'd spent hours daydreaming about, were so close. Too close. Hinata felt her cheeks burning. The sudden rush of blood to her face left her stumbling, and on the verge of fainting. Naruto had already overbalanced with his joyful movements. With an extra cheerful shake, he almost sent both of them crashing into the ground. Luckily, Naruto was able to right himself and her at the last moment, saving them from an undignified tumble. But in doing so his face came dangerously close to hers. For 3 full seconds, Hinata could feel his eyelashes brushing against her cheek. Naruto let go almost as quickly as he tackled her, leaving her head spinning. Now that there was distance between them, she remembered to breathe again. Thanks, Hinata, you're the best. And with those parting words, Naruto dashed outside. Iruka smiled at the still blushing girl as straightened his desk. Then he, too, left for lunch. Ah, puppy love. Alone in the classroom, Hinata raised her hand to her still tingling cheek. That night, Hinata dreamt of blue eyes and butterfly kisses. Hinata was the strangest girl he'd ever met. He never noticed her before, but ever since that day, the day she gave him her tape player, he couldn't seem to stop thinking about her. She was nothing like the other girls in his class. The other girls were always together in groups, or in pairs, as if they needed the support of numbers. Hinata was always alone. The other girls loved to gossip and chatter and giggle. Hinata rarely spoke. He'd never heard her laugh either, but he'd caught her smiling once or twice. The other girls were loud and bossy, especially that Ino. Hinata was quiet and timid. Then there was her physical appearance. Most girls wore bright colors and things to make them look pretty. Sakura wore bright red. Ino wore bright purple. Hinata, on the other hand, wore an unflattering plain beige jacket that looked too big for her. And what was wrong with her eyes? They were such a weird color. Not quite silver. Not quite white. Not quite lavender. Weird. But the strangest thing about her eyes was the lack of pupils. Was it a birth defect maybe? Naruto would not learn about bloodlines and related dujutsu until his 3rd year of the academy. She looked like she was blind, but obviously she could see just fine. She was definitely the strangest girl he ever met. And why had she given him a gift? Aside from the Sandaime Hokage, no one had ever given Naruto anything just because. There was always a price. Always. He never received birthday presents, Christmas presents, or any kind of presents. Why had she given him her tape player? The question burned. Was she playing a prank on him? The day after, he almost expected her to yell, "Just kidding. I want my tape player back." Or even worse, for her to accuse him of stealing it. It wouldn't be the first time he was accused of a theft he hadn't committed. But, no, that couldn't be right. Iruka-sensei was there when she gave it to him. If she were going to trick him like that, then she would have waited until there were no witnesses. 2 weeks had gone by since that day. By now, he was sure it wasn't a prank, or something would have happened already. He caught her looking at him more than once, not with cold, hateful eyes, the way the older villagers looked at him. Did she think he was funny looking? But then, every time tried to catch her eye or get her attention, she would look away. It was almost like she was trying to avoid him. Was she afraid of him? Should he talk to her? He didn't understand her at all. Well, whatever her reasons were, Naruto was grateful for the tape player. He used it to practice those memory retention techniques Iruka taught them. Again, and again, and again. He really mastered them. Then he started to use them during Iruka's lessons. He treated Iruka's lecture like another memory exercise. At first, he did it because he was simply bored in class, and doing memory exercises to Iruka's lecture made the class go by faster. He quickly discovered the first side benefit of doing this. No more flying erasers aimed at his head, because he was actually paying attention. He didn't discover the second side benefit until Iruka posted the results of their last exam. To his great surprise, and everyone else's, he aced the last exam. It was the first time he had ever done something well, better than well, instead of coming in dead last. Iruka-sensei had even congratulated him before the entire class. Naruto swelled with pride just remembering it. Of course, he wasn't memorizing whole lectures. But using the memory tricks, He could at least memorize the important points of the lectures quickly. Combine that with actually paying attention and Naruto was well on his way to academic success. Hinata was genuinely happy. When Naruto did so spectacularly on their last exam, she was so proud of him. She imagined she felt a bit like a proud parent would towards their baby's first steps. She was just bursting with pride. She had always known that Naruto was smart. It upset her whenever the other kids called him stupid or dead last. To have her belief vindicated felt satisfying. And she was proud of herself. It was such an alien concept, being proud of herself, that it took several days for her to correctly identify the emotion. She, the Hyuga failure, had done something right, for once. She had helped Naruto-kun. And he'd called her the best. Of course, it was just an expression, and he didn't really mean she was actually the best. She was a weakling. How could she possibly be the best at anything? But he had been happy. She had been the one to make him happy with her gift. For someone like her, it was a major accomplishment, almost a minor miracle. She wanted to approach him again to talk, to be his friend. But what if he didn't want to talk to her? What if he rejected her? Hinata sighed. What little courage she'd found to approach him that day was lost again. Next year, we will be introducing the basics of ninjutsu. Iruka smiled, as he noticed nearly every student sit up a little bit straighter. Shikamaru was still slumped in his seat. Naruto in particular was almost bouncing in his seat with excitement. Ninjutsu was the calling card of shinobi. The first 2 years of the academy were focused on basic taijutsu, basic weaponry, and non-combat ninja techniques, including history of the shinobi nations, basic strategy, and memory retention techniques, much to Naruto's disappointment. To hear the word ninjutsu before 3rd year was always cause for excitement. But before we get to that, we need to learn chakra theory and master the 12 fundamental hand seals used for manipulating chakra. What is chakra? Iruka wrote the word on the blackboard as he asked the question. He turned back to the class. Chakra is the combination of mental, physical, and spiritual energies in the body. Chakra is essential to life. Without it we would die. Chakra is also the essential ingredient to performing any shinobi jutsu. Hand seals are the second ingredient. Hand seals are used to change the chakra within your body into a jutsu. To perform a jutsu, you first summon chakra, then transform it into a jutsu using a hand seal, or a series of hand seals. In an actual fight, you will have to form hand seals while evading enemy attacks, so being able to make hand seals quickly and accurately is critical. The faster you can do the hand seals, the faster you can pull off a jutsu. And in a real fight, fractions of a second can mean the difference between life and death. Before you leave the academy, performing hand seals quickly should be as natural to you as breathing. First we will work on accuracy. Then we will work on speed. Now, I'm going to demonstrate the 12 fundamental hand seals. The trick to remembering them is to say the name aloud while forming the seal with your hands. Practice this until your fingers can move instinctively. Iruka went through hand seals, calling out the names as he demonstrated them. He held each seal for several seconds, so that his students could get a good look at it, before moving on to the next one. Rat, dragon, monkey, ox, snake, bird, tiger, horse, dog, hare, ram, boar. The next hour was spent going around the classroom. Iruka had each student form the hand seals for him. He gently corrected fingers and hand positions as he went along. The key to learning hand seals was repetition, but all the repetition in the world was no good if the seal was formed incorrectly. So Iruka didn't move on until he was certain the student knew the correct finger positions. Doing this didn't actually take much time. A majority of the students, about 70%, Iruka guessed, came from ninja backgrounds, where one or both parents were ninja. Some even came from prominent ninja clans, like the Hyuga and the Uchiha. Those students already knew the 12 hand signs and even had decent speed for academy students. Naruto was not one of those students. Iruka dedicated a good 10 minutes to helping him with his hands. When class let out for lunch, Naruto was cornered by Kenta and Jiro. The two of them came from minor ninja families and took great joy in rubbing Naruto's failures in his face. Hey, dead last, how are you going to be Hokage if you have to take remedial lessons from Iruka-sensei? Kenta laughed. I'm going to be Hokage. Mock Juro. You're so slow, I can finish all 12 hand seals before you can even do one. I have a better chance of becoming Hokage than you do. I am going to be Hokage. Naruto shot back. You won't be faster than me for long. Once I get some practice, I bet I can finish all 12 hand seals before you can. Yeah, right, not in a million years. Have fun with your remedial lessons. Loser. With one last shove, the boys ran off to enjoy the rest of their lunch break. Behind a corner, Hinata had witnessed the entire confrontation. Naruto sat down and started to slowly practice his hand seals. His eyes burned with determination. She heard him mutter, I am going to be Hokage. I am going to be faster. I'll be the fastest in the class. I won't give up. Then in a loud voice, Monkey. Good luck, Naruto-kun. I know you can do it. A few days later, Naruto had memorized all the hand seals. But his speed still needed work, a lot of work. He didn't understand it. No matter how many hours he practiced, he was still slower than most of his classmates, even the ones from non-ninja families, like Sakura. I'll ask Iruka-sensei today after class. Maybe there's something I'm missing. Iruka-sensei will help me. Iruka-sensei. Iruka looked up from grading papers to see Naruto hovering at the door of his office. Yes, Naruto. Can you give me any tips to help me get faster at making hand seals? I've been practicing really hard, but for some reason I'm still the slowest person in the class. Have a seat. Iruka gestured at the chair in front of his desk and waited for Naruto to get comfortable. How many hours a day are you practicing them? At least 3 hours a day. Sometimes 5. Iruka fought to keep the surprise from his face. That was above and beyond what he expected from most students. Naruto was certainly tenacious. But if that was true, and he had no reason to lie, then Naruto should be one of the fastest in the class. So why wasn't he? Unless, Iruka had never seen Naruto play ninja games with the other children. Could it be? I'm glad you're working so hard, Naruto. It is strange. With that much practice you really should be much faster. Then why am I not? Can you tell me what I'm doing wrong, Iruka-sensei? You're not doing anything wrong. Iruka hesitated. He really didn't want to bring up Naruto's isolation from the other children. But if he were right about this, then it would make a lot of sense. Naruto, have you ever played Cat's Cradle? You mean that string game? Naruto shook his head, looking confused. No. What does that have to do with anything? Have you ever wondered why Cat's Cradle is such a popular children's game in Konoha? Iruka slipped into lecture mode. It's not a very popular game in most places, except the hidden villages. Cat's Cradle isn't just a children's game for fun and passing time. It's actually an early training exercise. Cat's Cradle develops coordination and strengthens the muscles in your fingers and hands. It makes your fingers more nimble and flexible and improves manual dexterity. Most ninja parents teach their children to play the game before they can walk. Children from civilian families will play it, too. Even if their parents don't teach it to them, they learn by playing with other kids. We do live in a ninja village, after all. Think of it like lifting weights and running laps for taijutsu. Even if your taijutsu forms and stances are perfect, without lifting weights and running laps, you'll never be a taijutsu master. Cat's Cradle is like physical conditioning for hand seals, the same way weights and laps are physical conditioning for taijutsu. It's not part of the curriculum because most children have already learned it before they enter the academy. None of the other kids would play with me. Not even when I asked. Naruto said softly. Iruka winced. It was exactly as he'd thought. Naruto was just a kid. He shouldn't be treated like this. Sometimes, I hate being right. Iruka dug around his desk drawers. Now where is it? Ah, there it is. That's all right, Naruto. Iruka smiled and held out a red string. He knotted the ends together to form a loop. Would you like to learn how to play right now? Naruto stuffed the red string into his pocket as he stepped outside the academy. Class was over for the day, but there were still a lot of kids hanging out on the premises. Some kids, like Kiba, stayed behind for extra training and after-school sparring with other kids. Some kids, like Sakura and Ino, stayed just to gossip and hang out with their friends. Others, like Shikamaru, stayed to avoid chores at home. Although Naruto did not know this, Hinata stayed behind for 2 reasons: to avoid her family and to catch an extra glimpse of him. Naruto thought back to his meeting with Iruka. Iruka had explained that there were two different versions of Cat's Cradle, a civilian version and a ninja version. The ninja version had about 30 extra steps and was more complex. Also, the ninja version had an advanced level, with 2 strings and required 3 players. After playing several rounds of Cat's Cradle, the ninja version, of course Iruka had told him to find a friend to play it with. Flashback. I think you've got the hang of it, Naruto. Keep practicing, okay? If you can find a friend to play this with, come back here, and I'll teach you to play the advanced level of Cat's Cradle, since we'll need 3 people for that. The 3-player version is actually quite challenging, and fun. The 2 strings together form intricate designs and a single mistake can tangle you in knots very quickly. Flashback. Naruto frowned. Find a friend to play this with. Yeah, right, no one had ever played with him before. He didn't see how that was going to change anytime soon. But he really wanted to play again. It had been fun playing with Iruka-sensei. He wanted to play it again, and not just because it would help his speed with hand seals. Unfortunately, he didn't think the other kids would play with him. I won't give up before I try. I'll ask around anyways. No way, man, why would I want to play a baby game with you? Asked Kiba. He grinned, fangs showing, want to spar instead? I'll go easy on you. What are you, 3? That's such a boring game. Ino flounced away. Ew, get away from me. You probably have cooties. Sakura ran to rejoin Ino. Cat's Cradle, it's so troublesome, drawled Shikamaru, lying on his back. I just want to watch the clouds and take a nap. Ask me some other time. Hinata wavered with indecision. She'd heard Naruto asking around for a partner to play Cat's Cradle with. She didn't understand why he wanted to play a children's game. But if he wanted to play, she would play. She wanted desperately to go up to him and volunteer to be his partner. But she just couldn't. That was much too forward for the timid girl. If only he would ask her. Ask me, please. I'm here. He didn't see her. She saw him turn to leave. Ask me, please. She took one small step forward. Naruto growled in frustration. He'd been shot down, not once, not twice, but 4 times. 4. He might as well go home. There was no one else he could ask. A small sound and a flash of beige at the corner of his eye caught his attention. What was that? I could have sworn. Wait. Is that Hinata? In an alternate time and place, Naruto never noticed Hinata standing there, so he never thought to ask her, and he never found a partner for Cat's Cradle. Instead, Naruto worked hard to improve his speed little by little through sheer repetition on his own, and with a few more rounds of Cat's Cradle with Iruka-sensei. However, Iruka had other responsibilities and couldn't dedicate a great deal of time for one student, no matter how fond he was of Naruto. He would remain in the bottom quartile of the class, and never reach his full potential. One small action at the right time, at the right place, would change the world. In this time and place, Naruto had just spent 2 weeks wondering about Hinata and watching her, so he noticed her standing there, and thus, thought to ask her. Her small act of kindness gave him hope. Here was a person who didn't hate him. Otherwise, she wouldn't have given her tape player to him. Dare he? Should he risk being shot down yet again? I'll ask her. She might say, no, like all the rest, but she might say, yes. Maybe. She's so strange, normal people don't like me. She's not normal at all. She's different, so maybe she'll be my friend. Hinata. Right. Naruto shuffled his feet a little. Would you? I mean, I know it's kind of stupid, but would you like to play Cat's Cradle with me? Hi. Really? That's awesome. Come on. Naruto was nervous as they sat on the front steps of the academy to play. No. Scratch that. He was beyond nervous. He was about to have a full-blown panic attack. The training that Cat's Cradle was supposed to give him was irrelevant. That was neither here nor there. He almost couldn't believe she'd said, yes. It was the first time anyone his age agreed to play with him. Playing together was the first step to making friends, right? Friends played together. This was his chance. If he made a good enough impression, then maybe she'd agree to play with him again. That could lead to real friendship, something he'd only dreamed about. I can't mess this up. I have to do this right. Naturally, the moment he decided not to mess up, he ruined it. Naruto was so flustered that it didn't take more than a few steps into Cat's Cradle, the ninja version, of course, before the red string was one giant knot. He looked down at it in dismay. Hinata gently removed the string from his hands and worked on straightening the string out. It's okay, Naruto-kun. Would you like TT to try again? Naruto could only nod. He looped the string twice around his fingers and held his hands out to try again. 3 giant knots later, disaster struck. Somehow, he didn't know how, somehow he managed to tangle the string around both their hands, inadvertently, tying their hands together. Now they were stuck. Naruto swore internally. Idiot. I'm such an idiot. My big chance to make a friend, and I go and ruin it. She'll never play with me again. He glanced at his partner, only to see that her face was bright red. She was nice to me, and now she's angry. Why can't I do anything right? I'm sorry, he said somberly without his usual volume. I'm sorry I'm such a horrible player. I'm sorry I made you angry. Damn it, I really messed up. I'm always messing up. No wonder nobody wants to be friends with me. Heck, I wouldn't want to be friends with me, either. Hinata, who was blushing and not red-faced with anger, was startled by the misery on his face and the self-loathing in his voice. She rushed to reassure him, and for the first time, spoke straight from the heart, without thinking. No, I'm not mad. I want to be your friend. Do you mean it? Naruto looked at her in wonder. Hi, you want to be my friend? He asked again, just to be sure. When she nodded, pure joy erupted within him. The rush made him giddy. His heart felt strangely full, and for reasons he couldn't explain, he wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. She had accepted all his mistakes without derision. She wasn't angry. She accepted him, as he was. He had a friend. Thank you, he whispered at last. Had she done the right thing? Hinata wondered. She had quickly realized that he was a beginner at Cat's Cradle, but she didn't mind. Except Naruto had looked so upset. And the more upset he got, the more mistakes he made, which only made him more upset. Hinata was intimately familiar with those feelings. So she simply helped correct his mistakes. When their hands were tied together, she could only blush. And then, he was so hurt and miserable. The desperate need to comfort him made her bold. She would never have spoken so recklessly and impulsively otherwise. Now, although there was a sheen of tears in his eyes, his joy was unmistakable. Had she done the right thing? Yes. Naruto smiled at her. Hinata smiled back. All right. Naruto was back to his confident, excitable self. Let's go find Iruka-sensei to help us get untied. Then we can play again. I'll get it this time for sure. Naruto jumped to his feet. He was in such a hurry that he forgot to account for the law of inertia, which states, an object at rest tends to stay at rest and an object in motion tends to stay in motion, unless acted upon by an unbalanced force. When Naruto leapt to his feet, he became a moving object that wanted to keep moving. Hinata, who was quite comfortable where she was, became the stationary object that wanted to stay still. Unfortunately, the stationary object and the moving object were still tied together. The result was painful collision. Hinata was forcibly pulled up from a sitting position, while Naruto's upward leap was forcibly reversed, he was jerked backwards. Their heads collided with a resounding crack. Dazed and disoriented, Hinata opened her eyes and promptly forgot about the pain in her head. She had landed on top of Naruto with their hands trapped between their chests. More importantly, they were face to face, and so close that their noses were touching. And all she could see were blue eyes. Hinata instantly turned the color of a ripe tomato. It was too much for the poor girl. Oh no, I'm going to faint. When Iruka arrived on the scene a few minutes later, he found a Naruto sitting on the steps with an unconscious Hinata lying beside him. Her head was pillowed on his lap. Their hands were still tied together by red string. Iruka raised an eyebrow. Do I want to know what happened here? Ah, Iruka-sensei. Hinata and I were playing Cat's Cradle and we got stuck, Naruto said in embarrassment. When I jumped up to find you, I knocked our heads together. I think I must have hit her head too hard because Hinata passed out. Can you help us out? That night, Hinata fell asleep with a smile on her face. She, the weakest Hyuga, had done it again, something right. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as big a failure as she thought. Maybe she was able to change, a little bit. Hinata dreamt of blue eyes and Eskimo kisses. Life was good for Uzumaki Naruto. For once in his miserable life, things were going his way. He and Hinata had spent hours playing cat's cradle every day after class. After his nerves settled, Naruto was able to concentrate on the game. He mastered it quickly. To Hinata's secret disappointment, their hands did not get entangled again. They had even played a few rounds of the advanced level of Cat's Cradle with Iruka-sensei. In addition to the game, Naruto continued to practice hand seals on his own for several hours every night. Within a month his speed had dramatically improved. Within 2, he had lived up to his boast of being the fastest at forming hand seals in the class. Naruto grinned. Just yesterday Iruka-sensei had congratulated him on his progress in front of the whole class. Naruto had managed to tie with one Uchiha Sasuke, who was not pleased about sharing his pedestal. For the first time in his life, Naruto was the center of admiration, albeit grudging admiration, among his classmates. Iruka-sensei was proud of him, too. The positive attention felt absolutely amazing. He'd never been able to gain any sort of positive attention before. The best he'd been able to get was negative attention, as the butt of jokes or in the form scolding from Iruka-sensei for pulling pranks in class. It hadn't mattered though. The negative attention kept his loneliness at bay, and kept the cold, hateful eyes of the villagers from erasing his existence. For a little while, at least, the pain would diminish. Becoming a clown and a prankster wasn't so bad if it meant someone would really see him, really look at him and know that he was alive. Naruto felt wonderful. Praise from Iruka, grudging respect from his classmates, and gentle support from Hinata, it warmed his soul. Nothing could be better. Naruto, who craved any attention whether it was positive or negative, was simply addicted. Even after a full day, the warmth lingered. It formed an invisible barrier between him and the pain of loneliness, and even muted the nasty stares of the villagers. In an alternate time and place, Naruto became a clown and a prankster because no matter how hard he tried or how hard he worked, he was still the dead last at the academy. He was not stupid, he just wasn't given the tools to succeed. Any attention was better than no attention. In this time and place, Naruto, with a little help, had achieved some academic success and loved the praise and recognition that came with it. Now that he knew it was possible, and it was even better than he imagined, Naruto was determined to do it again. He would work hard and pay attention in class. He was going to be the best damned ninja he could be. Who wanted to be laughed at when he could be admired and respected? He wasn't going to be a clown. That kind of recognition was unpalatable now that he'd had a taste of real recognition. And so, the world changed. Well, Naruto thought for a moment and grinned mischievously. He could still pull a few pranks every now and then for old time's sake. Life was good. But there was one thing that could make it better, aside from becoming the Hokage, Hinata. Although he spent the day with her just yesterday, he already missed his friend. His friend. Just thinking the word in his head made him giddy. Sure, Hinata was a strange girl. But that only made her more special in his eyes. They had talked a lot while playing Cat's Cradle. Okay, so he had talked a lot while playing Cat's Cradle. Closing parenthesis. Naruto was surprised at some of the things he discovered. She was a lot of fun to be with. She had a great sense of humor, when he could get her to stop being so proper, and she was a great listener. When she listened, Naruto felt like he had her whole attention. He knew he was important to her. When he was with her, the pain of loneliness, of being hated for reasons he didn't understand, wasn't just diminished, it completely melted away. She was his precious friend. He couldn't wait until the weekend was over and he could see Hinata again. Hinata dreaded weekends. They couldn't go by fast enough for her. She knew she was an embarrassment to her clan. The fact that she was sent to the Ninja Academy for public instruction instead of being privately trained by her father or a senior Hyuga clansman was proof enough. When her father sent her to the academy, he had washed his hands of her ninja training. Hinata had inadvertently overheard him speaking to one of the elders. Flashback. Are you certain you want to send Hinata to the Ninja Academy? Asked Hyuga Hideki. As an elder of the Hyuga main branch, he was a traditionalist and always questioned the changes in tradition. Hinata has shown very little aptitude in her training. I will not waste my time on training her. She can attend the ninja academy and learn the ninja ways there. Hinata is the Hyuga family's successor. When she graduates the academy, she will become a genin. Missions that genin undertake have the possibility of death. If she dies on a mission, then she is a defect. A weak defect who dies on a genin ranked mission is not needed by the Hyuga. And there is still Hanabi. As you say, Hiyashi-sama. Flashback. Knowing that her father thought so little of her hurt deeply. Even though she was an embarrassment, sent away to the academy for her ninja training, Hinata was still the Hyuga heiress. This meant that weekends were spent with her father's advisors, never her father, training to become the next clan head. Her Hyuga teachers were stern taskmasters. A nod of approval was rare. Success was expected as a matter of course. Errors were met with harsh reprimands. They were nothing like Iruka-sensei. She was drilled for hours in politics, diplomacy, etiquette, economics, and law, all things necessary for an accomplished clan head. That wasn't so bad. In fact, Hinata was naturally adept in those subjects. She rather enjoyed them. While her teachers never praised her progress, at least they never criticized her either. It was her other lessons, the ones for Juken, the Hyuga gentle fist style, that she dreaded. She could never seem to meet the expectations set for her in Juken. Her Byakugan had trouble seeing all the tenketsu, the chakra points in the chakra circulatory system. Her chakra control wasn't good enough. Her stance was weak. Her speed was lacking. Her defense was poor. Against other Hyuga children she was easily defeated. For the heir, that was simply unacceptable. She cringed at her terrible performance in Juken. She rubbed at the painful bruises that dotted her arms and legs. Her Juken instructors, and her sparring opponents, did not hold back. Ever. Training sessions in Juken were always painful. Often excessively painful, Hinata thought. The one bright spot to her weekends was Hanabi. Hinata adored her baby sister. The toddler was just starting to speak in full sentences. Hanabi was the only person in her family who was always happy to see her. Onisan. Play with Hanabi-chan. Her mistakes and failures didn't mean anything to the child. To her, Hinata was not the family disappointment. To her, Hinata was simply her big sister. The one who played with her, the one who always made time for her, the one who sang her songs and tucked her in at night. Training in the Byakugan and in Juken typically started at the age of 3. In just 1 year, Hanabi's training would start. And Hinata was afraid, so very afraid, that when it did, she would lose Hanabi. She was afraid that Hanabi would become like the rest of her family. Cold, unfeeling, and intolerant of weakness. Intolerant of Hinata. The thought of losing Hanabi made her want to cry. She pushed those thoughts aside as she headed for the family dojo. It was time for Juken training. Her heart sank when she saw the person standing beside her instructor. NN Neji Nissan. Neji glared. You will spar with Neji today. Let us hope you have improved. Itadakimasu. Naruto slurped happily away at his ramen. After the Hokage, Iruka-sensei and Hinata, old man Tuki, who was the owner and chef of the Ichiraku ramen stand, and his daughter Ayame were his favorite people in Konoha. They had always been kind to him, treating him just like any other customer. Most of the other food sellers refused to serve him. If they did, they went out of their way to make the experience as unpleasant as possible. The familiar atmosphere was relaxing. While he ate, Naruto imagined that Tuki was like a gruff uncle and Ayame was like an older cousin to him. They always made time to chat with him and ask him how he was doing, even when they were busy. Speaking of which, so Naruto, when are you going to introduce us to your new friend? Asked Tuki, as he worked. The knife in his hand flashed as he chopped green onions for garnish. You wanted to meet Hinata-chan. Of course, we do. Silly. Ayame rolled her eyes and lightly bopped him on the head with a long wooden spoon. You've only been talking non-stop about her for the last 2 months. I feel like I know her already. We'd love to meet her. Her father nodded in agreement. Any friend of our best customer is always welcome here. Thanks. Naruto beamed. We usually hang out and train after class until she has to go home for dinner with her family. I think we can skip training on Monday and come straight here after class instead. We've been working really hard, so skipping every now and then won't hurt. That sounds wonderful. We'll be expecting you, so don't forget. Admonished Ayame. I won't. Naruto lifted his bowl and quickly drank the broth. Gochisu-sama. Naruto hopped off his stool, but Yuki stopped him before he could leave. Wait, Naruto. Would you be interested in any candy today? Our supplier made a mistake with our order. Instead of delivering a case of spices, he delivered a case of Konoha Bakuden. But he won't take it back or exchange it for the spices we originally ordered. So we're offering it to our customers. Naruto's eyes lit up at the words, Konoha Bakuden, and he almost drooled. Konoha Bakuden, or Konobaku for short, were small round balls made with a crispy pastry shell and dark chocolate filling. They were a very popular sweet in Konoha. He had only eaten the treats a handful of times before. He didn't often have much money to splurge on sweets. And even when he did, none of the candy stores in the village would serve him. The Sandaime Hokage would sometimes give him a small bag on the rare occasions he visited. And once, he'd begged a few off of Choji. Really? Naruto almost danced with excitement. You have Konobaku for me. You're the best, Oji-san. Later that night, after closing their restaurant, Ayame turned to her father. That was a very nice thing you did for him, father. There was no need to say who him was. There was no mistake with our supplier. You ordered a case of Konobaku on purpose. Maybe I did, Tsuki said gruffly. He's a good boy. He deserves to have a few treats every now and then. No, father, Ayame gave her father a long searching look. Naruto doesn't just deserve to have a few treats every now and then. He deserves a lot more than that. The way everyone treats him, it's despicable. Why did they do that? Ayame-chan, Tsuki sighed. I can't tell you. Just know that it's not his fault, it's nothing he did. This has something to do with the Kyuubi, doesn't it? Who told you that? He asked in alarm. No one told me, father. I swear. Sometimes you must think I'm still a baby. I'm not stupid. Then how? I remember when the Kyuubi attacked, she said softly. I was only 5, but I still remember that day, at least a little. There's a big secret about Naruto, isn't there? He was born on that day. And almost everyone hates him for it. I don't understand it, but I know it has to do with the Kyuubi. You're too smart for your own good, Ayame-chan, Tsuki said ruefully. I still can't tell you. And you mustn't say anything about this to anyone else. Do you understand? Her father was absolutely serious. She could tell. She couldn't remember if he'd ever been more serious. This was important. Ayame nodded. I won't, father. I promise. They worked quietly for a few more minutes. Then, father. Yes, Ayame-chan, let's order more treats for Naruto in the future. Tsuki smiled softly. I am so proud of you, my daughter. After putting in some target practice, Naruto wondered if he should just go home. It was a beautiful day, not too warm, not too cold. The air was crisp, and the sun was shining. The day was just perfect. Naruto decided against it. Instead, he made his way to the Konoha public park. He would enjoy the rest of the day at their bench. Well, it wasn't really theirs. It was a public park, after all. But since the bench was off the beaten path, not many people used it. Naruto and Hinata had used it as their spot for playing cat's cradle. The bag of Konobaku balls rattled in his hip pouch and Naruto was sorely tempted to eat them right away. No, I'll wait. I want to share them with Hinata-chan. He'd never shared anything with a friend before. He had only watched enviously as other kids shared toys and snacks with each other, but never with him. As he neared his destination, Naruto was disappointed to see that someone was already there. He frowned. Whoever it was probably wouldn't want to share the bench with him. As he got closer, he could make out more details. It was a child, probably about his age, sitting curled with her arms around her knees. And that person was crying. In fact, Naruto thought that person was strangely familiar. He or she reminded him of Hinata. Then with a start, Naruto realized that it was Hinata who for once was not wearing her large beige jacket. Instead, she was wearing a black t-shirt and black training pants. Without the coat, she looked smaller and more vulnerable. And, were those bruises on her arms? Naruto rushed forward in alarm. She was crying and she was hurt. Hinata-chan. What happened? Are you okay? Hinata had been thoroughly defeated by her cousin Neji. Her instructor watched impassively as the cousins sparred, if it could be called sparring. Hinata never stood a chance. Neji had the most potential of any Hyuga in generations. After losing painfully yet again, and getting dropped by a right hook to her temple that had gotten past her guard, Hinata lay dazed and panting on the tatami mats of the dojo. When it became obvious that Hinata could no longer continue, her instructor finally spoke. Flashback. It seems there has been no improvement. You failed to land even single hit on Neji. Your guard is so weak as to be non-existent. Next week, we shall attempt to improve it. Pain is an excellent motivator. Perhaps this shall encourage you to work harder. You are dismissed. He did not help her up. Hinata heard only one set of footsteps leaving the dojo. Surprised, she turned her head to find that Neji had remained. It will not matter whether or not you work harder. We are all bound to our fates. I was born to serve the Hyuga main branch. You were born weak, and you will never reach my level. It is futile to try. You should just give up right now. Then he left, as well. Alone at last, Hinata succumbed to tears. She rolled over and forced herself to stand up. It hurt to move. It hurt to breathe. She tried so hard. Why was she still so weak? Was Neji right? Should she give up and accept her failures? All of a sudden, the Hyuga estate felt suffocating. Within its walls, she was constantly criticized, never accepted. She did not want to be there. If only she were a bird, she would fly away and never come back. Flashback. Hinata did not know how she got to the park and to their bench. She did not remember leaving the Hyuga compound. In this place, where she held happy memories, she let herself cry. If only she could be more like Naruto. Almost as if the thought conjured him, he was suddenly there and full of concern. Hinata-chan. What happened? Are you okay? Naruto could have kicked himself. What a stupid thing to ask. She was obviously not okay. Hinata's head snapped up in surprise. She tried unsuccessfully to dry her tears and hide the evidence of her distress. Naruto could see that, in addition to the set of bruises on her arms, her lower lip was split and there was another bruise forming on her right cheek. Suddenly he was angry. Who had hurt her? Who had hurt his friend? Hinata-chan. Naruto softly repeated the question, what happened to you? Hinata looked away shamefully. She couldn't bear to look him in the eyes. It was nothing, Naruto-kun. JJ just spe sparring and tur training in Juken. You look awful. Hinata winced. Naruto spoke fiercely, sparring and training is what we do in class. Whatever it was that you just did was not sparring. Who hurt you? Hinata-chan. Neji Nissan. BB but it wasn't his FF fault. IGG got HH hurt because I am TT2 weak. IDD don't deserve to be a Hyuga. Why am I always SS so weak? Hinata burst into tears again. She had just confessed her weakness to Naruto. She hadn't wanted to tell him, but he deserved the truth. Surely, now that he knew how weak she truly was, he would no longer want to be her friend. The last 2 months had been wonderful. But she had known it couldn't last. Why would he want the weak, little girl that even her family rejected? She stiffened when she felt a pair of arms go around her. Naruto was hugging her. If she hadn't been in so much shock, she would have blushed. You are not weak. You are smart and strong. Whoever told you that is either blind or an idiot, he's probably both. BB but, Hinata protested, everyone in my FF family says SS so. I'm the FF failure AA and the WW weakest. The Hyuga DD don't need someone LL like me. I should GG give you up. Did they really say that to you? Naruto asked softly. With every word that came out of her mouth, Naruto felt the burning anger in his chest grow. He was furious. It was one thing to put him down. He'd been put down his entire life. It was another thing entirely to disparage Hinata. That was unforgivable. Hi, she whispered. Hinata fully expected him to let go in disgust. Instead, his arms tightened around her and he gave her a little shake. Bullshit. Listen to me, Hinata-chan. You are smart. You understand Iruka-sensei's lectures right away, and sometimes you even explain them to me better than he does. You are strong. You beat Kiba and Choji during last week's class spar. Your family and this Neji are just blind and stupid if they can't see that. Hinata looked at him in wonder. Even after all that, all the proof to the contrary, Naruto still believed in her. He still believed she was a worthy friend. But Naruto wasn't finished yet. You don't need to listen to what they say. People have told me that I'm a waste of space. Hinata gasped in horror. But that doesn't matter, because someday, I'm going to prove them wrong. I'm going to be Hokage. I don't give up. If I did, I would have died a long time ago. And someday, you'll be the strongest Hyuga that ever was. You're going to prove your stupid family wrong and make them eat their words. You are my best friend. And you will not give up. In another time and place, Hinata had no one to comfort her, to dry her tears, to encourage her. She had no one who would believe in her. And so, she faltered. The mind is a powerful, inexplicable thing. Because she believed she was weak, she became weak. It would take many years for her to overcome this block and reach her true potential. In this time and place, Hinata had Naruto, who honestly believed she was strong, and who did not know how to give up. Naruto believed in her. Naruto never quit. And if he said she was strong, maybe, just maybe, she was. And so, with his encouragement, Hinata would get up and try again. She had Naruto, who would always be there to pick her up if she fell. She had Naruto, who would always cheer the loudest for every small success that she achieved. She had Naruto, who had just called her his best friend. Hinata could hardly believe she could be the best at anything, yet, here she was, Naruto's best friend. Naruto's best friend was not a failure. She would not let him down. And so, the world changed. Thank you, Hinata sniffed. This time they were happy tears. When she could speak again, there was a new fire in her eyes. You're right, Naruto-kun. I'm not done fighting yet. Next time, I'll hit Neji Nissan BB back. That Neji won't know what hit him. Naruto grinned, relieved to see that Hinata was feeling better. They sat side by side in comfortable silence, just enjoying each other's presence and the beautiful weather, until Naruto remembered his surprise. Oh, I almost forgot. This will definitely cheer you up. He grinned, revealing a new unopened bag of Konoha Bakuden. Kono Baku. I was going to share these with you after school on Monday. But I think you could use some right now. What do you say? Sure. Hinata wasn't going to turn down free candy. What 7-year-old in his or her right mind would turn down delicious Kono Baku candy? The two children happily ate their Kono Baku. To Naruto, it was the best Kono Baku he'd ever tasted, all because he was sharing it with his best friend. To Hinata, the candy tasted even better than all the gourmet candies imported from the best confectionaires in the world. It was a little-known secret that most Hyuga had a sweet tooth. Hence, the Hyuga estate was well stocked with the best candies money could buy. All because she was sharing it with her best friend. Soon the bag of treats was nearly empty. Hinata and Naruto both reached for the last piece at the same time. Hinata jerked her hand back when she felt Naruto's hand brush against hers. She blushed lightly and then looked down in disappointment. There was only one piece left. Proper etiquette demanded that she leave the last piece for Naruto. It was his bag of candy, after all. So he should get the last piece. Would you like the last piece, Hinata-chan? Naruto asked considerately. No. Thank you. UCC can have it, Naruto-kun. Naruto looked thoughtful. We should share. I know. Before Hinata could ask how he intended for them to share, Naruto picked up the last piece and took a bite. He bit off half the Kono Baku ball. And before Hinata could stop him, Naruto popped the other half of the candy into her mouth. Did he just? Hinata couldn't even finish the thought in her head. Her eyes went impossibly wide. Her heart pounded so loudly she was surprised he didn't hear it. The light blush she wore, from their accidental touch just a few moments before, erupted into a flaming red bloom. That was delicious, wasn't it? Naruto asked. He turned to look at her and caught sight of her red face. Ah, Hinata-chan, are you okay? Your face is flushed. That Neji must have hurt you more than we thought. Let's take you to the doctor right away. We have to make sure it's nothing serious. Hinata couldn't answer him because she was doing her level best not to faint. She succeeded. Barely. That night, Hinata dreamt of chocolate-filled candies and indirect kisses.